but I'll be alright as long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will. Yeah. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Now, don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while. Yes, I will. I'm just happy to see you talk to me back in style again. Ow.
Live from the Myrtle Park, USA, I'm Tavis Smiley, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to see you and me back in stride again. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you to download our app right now at KBLA 1580. Download the app and take us with you anywhere in the world and listen to us in real time, but only by downloading our app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of this program by going to the app, if you've downloaded it, that is, the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to get the podcast of this program and listen at your leisure. Should you miss us any day in real time, but I am delighted to have you along live with us today for the next 3 hours. You can also watch the live stream of this program by tapping the KBLA TV icon on your app or going to our YouTube channel. Let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, Richard Rothstein, best-selling author of The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America, joins us for a conversation about the redress movement to rectify American segregation, and he'll tee up his highly anticipated forthcoming text, Just Action, creating a movement that can end segregation enacted under the color of law. We're going to have a rich conversation, I promise you, with Richard Rothstein once we get today to hour two. In our third hour, as a marginalized student, boarding school was supposed to be the opportunity of a lifetime for Kendra James. A world-class education, the space and resources of a small college, and a close-knit community all in one perfect package. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way once Kendra actually inhabited a space that was actually never built for her. The experience would prove to be anything but an educational panacea. Kendra James discusses Admissions, a memoir of surviving boarding school, in hour three. But in this first hour today, what a whirlwind of political news over the past days, including over the weekend, of course. Democrats, now we know, win the Senate. Republicans take back the House. Nancy Pelosi has stepped aside. Black folk making history as mayors of Los Angeles and the LBC, Long Beach. Trump back on the White House campaign trail, and the thing that just shut down the internet over the weekend, the news announced by Elon Musk that Donald Trump has been returned to Twitter. So much to unpack in this first hour with Dr. Christina Greer, Associate Professor of Political Science and American Studies at Fordham University and author of the text Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. No better time to talk to a political science professor than right about now. Professor Greer, how are you today?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a delight to have you on. Thank you for the time. Glad we got the hour. Again, a lot to unpack over the next 60 minutes. Let me start with this. The story, as I said, that kind of broke the internet, everybody. I was at a basketball game this weekend, and I just felt my phone just buzzing like crazy in my pocket. And I pulled it out and looked at it, and just a string of messages, everybody commenting on the announcement by Elon Musk, who, of course, bought Twitter some days ago, that Donald Trump, it's no surprise here, we knew it was coming, but now that it's here, how do you process the fact that Donald Trump once again has access to Twitter?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is I don't think Donald Trump is interested in having access to Twitter right now because he wants to pull people to his Truth Social. I mean, keep in mind, Tavis, everything that Donald Trump does is to enrich Donald Trump. So he recognizes that coming back on Twitter will enrich Elon Musk, who overpaid for Twitter in a dying sort of social media platform. So he actually wants to pull people to his money-making schemes, not someone else's. But obviously, if his presidential campaign continues to, sort of not have as much traction as he wanted, then obviously he might, scoot over to Twitter and start with the incendiary tweets that we have seen. The data and the rubrics have shown us that, when he tweets, we have seen an increase in violence because he actually incites his base in such a vitriolic and negative space. We have to be honest. We are now dealing with a cult. This faction of the Republican Party, this sort of extremist faction, has taken over the party, and Donald Trump likes being the leader of it. There's some old school Republicans who are looking at what happened, a week and a half ago and saying, I don't know if that's actually the future strategy. But Tavis, in the past, we've seen this president take down single-handedly all these lily-livered, mealy-mouthed Republicans by either threatening them, insulting them, or, sort of implying that he has dirt on them in some way, shape, or form. And we've seen time and time again, one by one, they all acquiesce and fall into line. So I don't know if that'll happen in 2024, but we've definitely seen it happen in the last 6 years.
That is a mouthful. That's why I wanted you on, because we need the entire hour to unpack just what you've said now.
Right,
and I haven't even started running down my list of things I want to get your take on today. But let me go here first and follow you. There are a couple things you said now I want to give you a chance to unpack for us. When you suggested that Twitter is a dying social media platform, I assume you said that because you believe it.
Yes, I mean, ever since Elon Musk took over, I mean, there are a lot of conversations that have happened on Twitter that said, we're leaving. People don't want to be part of, a place where you can buy a blue check for $8. We've seen what happened, with what was it, Lilly, the diabetes or the insulin company, people impersonating George Bush and Jesus Christ and LeBron James. So there also, even before Elon Musk bought it, there was this migration away from Twitter where a lot of people were choosing other social media spaces or just doing a social media cleanse. So we know that he overpaid for a platform that a lot of folks have moved away from. Obviously a lot of journalists and political scientists have stayed on the platform because it's where we communicate with one another and get our news. But, young people, when I talk to my students, none of them are on Twitter. They're on social media platforms that I haven't even heard of. They're on Instagram and TikTok, sure, but they're on other platforms where I'm like, what is that? How do you all communicate? So, it's one of those platforms that I think Elon Musk wants to bring people back to. But ever since he took over, and we know, the week that he took over, instances of the N-word, were up 500%.
Yes.
As a Black woman who talks politics, obviously the level of harassment that Black women receive on social media platforms, Twitter especially, is astounding. And a lot of people just realize they're not interested in that type of communication, and especially in supporting someone like Elon Musk, who finds it kind of fun and cute. For instance, when RIP Jimmy Fallon was trending, you have Jimmy Fallon essentially pleading with Elon Musk to do something about this hashtag that's trending that says he's dead, and he's getting calls from his family and friends, and Elon Musk essentially tweets back at him just like a fun, cutesy message, like, oh, you'll be fine. And so we see, a man like him supporting the likes of, say, Kanye West and Donald Trump and the right-wing extremists, but not really caring about other individuals on the platform who have real concerns, who are trying to actually build a community and not just incendiary comments.
You've heard Dr. Christina Greer Fordham just sort of lay out all that's happened since Elon Musk took over Twitter. And we know, as she said a moment ago, that when Donald Trump starts to tweet these incendiary statements that he has been known to push out, it connects directly to an increase in political violence. And so one of the issues that I raised in my comments over the weekend was whether or not Elon Musk is prepared to be held accountable for what's about to happen if, in fact, Donald Trump goes back on Twitter and starts making these incendiary comments. It seems to me to be just in time. That is to say, Elon Musk allows Donald Trump back on Twitter just in time to drive his followers crazy and to get ready for another January 6th insurrection if this election does not go Donald Trump's way. So I want to talk in a moment about how, in fact, in this moment, we hold Elon Musk accountable. You heard her comment about her comment about Jimmy Fallon and how Elon Musk sort of just, laughed that off. I mean, there's some serious issues to be raised about the lack of accountability in social media writ large, but particularly in this moment when Elon Musk does something like allowing Donald Trump back on Twitter, and we know exactly what that's going to lead to. You also heard Professor Greer say, well, maybe not so fast. Maybe Trump wants to draw people to his Truth Social platform, and maybe he doesn't embrace Twitter as quickly as possible unless his campaign doesn't get the traction that he wants it to have. And I'm wondering what she thinks of the traction or lack thereof that the campaign has gotten or not received in the days since Donald Trump announced that he is in fact going to seek the White House once again. That and a great deal more to talk about. The NAACP has called on Twitter advertisers to take action after Trump's reinstatement. So everybody's talking about this issue, concerned about it. Specifically, it's linked to the increase in political violence that we have seen documented in years past. A great deal to talk about for the rest of this hour with Dr. Christina Greer on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
The Institute for Diversity Certification is all about the 3 Ds: dedication, determination, and discipline. Learn more about our globally recognized diversity certification program today by calling 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192, or visit diversitycertification.org. As the #1 organization for certified diversity professionals and also certified diversity executive credentials, diversitycertification.org will provide an opportunity for you to demonstrate dedication to the field, determination to make progress, and more discipline to your process. Go today and learn more about the diversity certification system. Call 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192. Or go to diversitycertification.org. That's diversitycertification.org. The standard of excellence, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here with Dom Kennedy at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. They're here to promote generational wealth building in Black communities. He's an independent rapper and the owner of OPM record label. Dom Kennedy, why do you find it important to be here today at this event with Chase?
For me, we've been having a lot of conversations with them, and been giving me a lot of good facts and a lot of good feedback that I felt like needed to be shared. And if people heard it, they would take to the information and it would help them on their quest to be homeowners and just better off financially across the board. They like my perspective and being an artist and somebody that people knew that was born and raised in LA. People older and like bank managers could kind of be a little intimidating, I guess, to everyday people, especially that has never purchased a home. So just the angle of me being able to communicate it and make the story real, I guess for the younger people was a great opportunity and I didn't want to pass on.
That's awesome. So answer me this. Why is it important for companies like Chase to promote generational wealth in Black and brown communities?
Keep it real, they make a lot of money off the Black and brown communities. I look at it like it's a great responsibility for them to take on, to want to share some knowledge and some facts and try to put more people in homes, and give them a shot at and a chance at generational wealth. I think it's beneficial to both parties,
I'm Maisha Cairo, and that was Dom Kennedy. Stay tuned for more tips from Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour.
This Black Friday, we're checking everyone off your list with unbeatable deals at Ulta Beauty all week long. Starting November 20th, shop hundreds of exciting deals in store and online. And beginning Tuesday, get $12 mascaras from brands like Benefit and $10 lippies from brands like Fenty, and so much more. Because our kind of holiday is you having your kind of holiday. So what are you waiting for? Hurry to an Ulta Beauty near you or buy online and pick up in store. Ulta Beauty, the possibilities are beautiful.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
It does indeed with Dr. Christina Greer, Fordham, author of the book Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream, which we'll unpack a little bit later in this conversation. We continue our conversation now, though, about all the trending news stories over the past few days. The biggest one, the story of Elon Musk inviting and welcoming Donald Trump back to Twitter. I said a moment ago, the NAACP has called on Twitter advertisers to take action after Mr. Trump's reinstatement, which leads us, Christina Greer, Dr. Greer, to the larger question. And this is a question obviously much bigger than Twitter, but Twitter is, of course, the story of the moment. This issue of this notion of accountability for those who allow others on their platforms to say and do things that lead to the kind of political violence that we've seen when Donald Trump, again, pushes out these sort of incendiary comments. Your take on how and whether or not Elon Musk is prepared to be held accountable for opening up the doors once again of Twitter to Donald Trump.
Yeah, Tavis, I think that's such an important question that I don't have the answer to. I've been talking to my students about that, because there's so many new fields of law that they can go into. should he be held accountable for other people's actions by a site that he owns, even if he didn't say the incendiary comments himself? I mean, I think, honestly, Tavis, the only way that he'll really be held accountable is if we see it in an economic space first. I don't think that, a lot of folks really care about what happens to people of color, poor people, and Black people specifically when it comes to this type of violence, even though we've seen a direct correlation between the types of hate speech on platforms like Twitter and then obviously the horrific and terrible incidents that we saw in, say, Colorado Springs over the weekend. So, I think the economic space is where we might first see some traction, because if you have a company like Eli Lilly, as I mentioned before, where you have someone impersonating them and saying, oh, insulin now is free, as opposed to, the obscene prices that they're charging diabetics, and then we see their stock prices fall. I think that's where we might see some legal conversations and some ramifications for Elon Musk and his platform. And then it might trickle into the types of violence that we've been talking about.
So the NAACP might be onto something here, calling on Twitter advertisers to take action then.
Well, I mean, Tavis, yeah. I mean, we know that, people respond to when their pocketbooks are hit, and so as you try and hit Elon Musk in his pockets, which are a little thin right now. I mean, granted, we're still talking in the billions, but we do know that he overpaid for a site that, by all accounts, every single economist has said, the value market of Twitter was roughly around $11 billion, and he paid $44 billion. So we can do the math and say that even if he's got money left over, you overpaid for a product that everyone is saying, you possibly paid 3 times the amount, and you shouldn't have. So I think he's trying to make that money back in any way possible. First it's, people can purchase their blue checks. That didn't really go well. He's seeing not just people hemorrhaging from the site, but obviously hemorrhaging from the corporation. Folks who don't even want to work for a man like him, who would actually think that, helping to incite violence and excavating some of the worst individuals in the United States is something cute and fun to do. We've seen people choose their morals over a paycheck and figure out where they'll go in their next steps. But there are a lot of folks who said they just don't want to work for a man and a company that would actually support this type of behavior.
Yeah. Let me go from that man to the other man, from Elon Musk to Donald Trump himself. You suggested earlier that Trump might embrace Twitter because it's all about Donald Trump. We all get that. So he's trying to drive people to his platform of Truth Social, where he sends out messages all the time. But now that he's been invited back to Twitter, the question is whether or not Trump will take the opportunity to use that platform in the months ahead as he campaigns for the White House. And you suggested that he might consider going back to Twitter if his campaign doesn't gain the kind of traction that he expects or hopes that it will, which leads me to ask, since he made the announcement, what are you watching? How are you processing whether or not his campaign with his own base is catching fire?
Yeah, I always have to be cautious, Tavis, because I'm in New York City.
Right.
So how the New York City Post, the New York Post has turned against Donald Trump, that's just Rupert Murdoch. That's not his base necessarily. And we saw in 2016, every single member, credible card-carrying member of the Republican Party initially came out against Donald Trump. Lindsey Graham, he would be the worst thing for our party, and we would deserve it if he became our nominee. Ted Cruz, Rubio, Romney, you name it. And then one by one, each and every one of them got in line and not only supported Donald Trump, but they became, sycophants for Donald Trump. So even though right now in 2022, they're saying, well, it's time for us to move on. There's January 6th, but obviously, sorry, I live in New York City, as I said.
No,
of course,
I'm laughing. I'm
background sirens.
I'm laughing because you'll appreciate this comment. My boy Miles and I laugh about this all the time. Whenever I talk to anyone from New York City live on this national radio program, I wait, and we have a bet. We time how long it's going to be before we hear sirens in the background. It's just
We've got a soundtrack.
it's part of
the New York City guest soundtrack.
Yeah, it's part of I like that. I'll start using that phrase. It is part of the New York City guest soundtrack. But it's always just a matter of time before one of those sirens, or if not more than one, pops into the conversation. So we're laughing. We understand it. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No worries. So the thing is, it's 2022 now. We've seen, yet again, card-carrying Republicans saying, well, it's time for us to move in a different direction. We saw what happened, in the November 8th elections, and obviously almost all of Donald Trump's candidates that he backed and supported, they did not win, right? The voters have, sort of said, They wanted to go in a different direction. Republicans aren't necessarily interested in just Hunter Biden's laptop, and they don't want to be known as a party of insurrectionists and white supremacists. Now, there's still millions and millions of people who do, but by and large, the Donald Trump-backed candidates did not do well. And so as of now, we see Republicans saying, well, let's move in a different direction. Well, I don't know if I trust Republicans to have a spine and follow that all the way through. We do know that Donald Trump has already started saying, for example, with Ron DeSantis, who, as of the last few weeks has been sort of, the new golden child and the possible heir apparent. He's already started with the threatening remarks that he's done before. I know things about him only his wife knows. I don't know how and why he would know things about Ron DeSantis that only his wife would know, but sure, you can go with that. But, he always, he's bullied his way onto the table time and time again, not just in business, but also in politics. And I don't know if it'll work this time. It could, because we've seen that the Republicans have very little spine when it comes to sticking up to Donald Trump. Don't forget, January 7th, 2021, you had so many Republicans saying, we are not these people. We cannot support this type of behavior. We cannot support these types of individuals storming the Capitol. And then slowly but surely, almost a week later, it wasn't that bad. These are patriots. Nancy Pelosi's being histrionic. Democrats are just trying to divide us. We fully support Donald Trump. And we see over 100 some odd Republicans, still firmly believe in the House that, Donald Trump is the quote unquote rightful president of the 2020 election. And there are election deniers that were on the ballot in every single state this past election. So that should concern us because he still has a hold and a grip, not just on his base, but on people who were already elected members of not just Congress, but state houses across the country.
Yep. Language matters to me. I know it matters to you. You're a professor and an author, so language matters. Words matter. And I want to give you an opportunity to unpack why you use the word cult to describe the Donald Trump following. I'm not saying I disagree. I just think it's important for people to understand why you'd use such a charged word like cult to describe those followers, those sycophants, as you would call them. Yeah.
And, before I would use the word sycophant just because it's like, oh, you follow, what someone says and you're not really sort of thinking about it. But, Tavis, I just started using the word cult when I saw time and time again that it absolutely does not matter what Donald Trump says or does. His supporters will support it. So when it comes to, someone who used to be pro-choice and now he's anti-choice. I refuse to use the term pro-life because clearly these people do not care about the sanctity of life. People were killed on January 6th. They don't support a social safety net. So they're not really concerned about the living. They're just anti-choice. They follow him. This is a man who is, thrice married, but wants to say that Barack Obama has a baby mama. This is a man who, has no respect for people of other religions, but he's a true Christian. And you have people, white evangelicals, time and time again, supporting him. These are people where if Donald Trump says support Herschel Walker over Reverend Raphael Warnock, they say, yes, Warnock is a sinner and Herschel Walker with, his countless allegations of abuse and abortions and all the things, he's the true Christian. So, these are people where as long as Donald Trump says it, even if the evidence is there to the contrary, whether it's financial or moral or policy-wise, they just believe anything he says. And if you remember when he was president, he would say something at 9 o'clock in the morning, say the opposite by noon, and his supporters would shift directions and then go back to his original statement by the evening, and they'd shift again, almost like school of fish, And so it's really troubling because it doesn't matter what he says. They're into it. And if you think of it as a cult, you've got someone like Mitch McConnell voting against interracial marriage, and he's in an interracial marriage. So, these are people who consistently not just vote against their own interests, but they vote against their own value systems and who they actually are. So you've got women who are wearing T-shirts who say he can grab me by the pee, after Donald Trump's, famous Access Hollywood speech. And the list goes on from instances from before he was president and then when he was president, and especially since he's been president in his quasi exile, as he calls it. And it's just worrisome because it really directly correlates with the Republicans being so, they call it CRT, but, their desire to make sure that their population remains as uneducated as possible, so that they can not only pull the wool over their eyes, when it comes to, these culture wars, but especially economically. You've got them, the Republican Party, their states were the ones with the highest instances of violence and gun violence. They're the ones with the lowest rates of health insurance. They're the ones who've died the greatest numbers by COVID. So it's a losing strategy in a long-term sense, but it's fascinating how their supporters are consistently voting against themselves time and time again. And as LBJ and W.B. Du Bois told us, what the Republican Party and Donald Trump in particular are selling is whiteness. And they're buying it in droves, and that's the only thing that's going to keep them warm at night.
When we come forward after news, traffic, and sports here, looking at my clock, I want to shift from Donald Trump to another president, momentarily at least, Barack Obama. Former President Obama has announced that on December the 1st, speaking of Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock, as you heard Dr. Greer say a moment ago, Obama has announced that on December 1st he'll be in Georgia campaigning for Raphael Warnock. So the former president headed down to Georgia to try to get Raphael Warnock across the finish line. My question specifically with regard to that race for Professor Greer is what she makes of the fact that these evangelicals, you just mentioned Reverend Warnock a moment ago, can you imagine that the evangelicals in the state of Georgia would rather support and vote for Herschel Walker and all the list of things that she sort of laid out a moment ago, rather than supporting a preacher in the Bible Belt? Evangelicals we're talking about now. Raphael Warnock is a preacher in the Bible Belt, pastors the church that was once pastored by Dr. King. He ain't no liberal or progressive, really. I like him. He's my friend. He's more moderate than he is progressive in some respects, and yet they still would support Herschel Walker over this preacher in the Bible Belt, evangelicals we're talking about, supporting Raphael Warnock. It doesn't make much sense, does it? That and a great deal more to talk about, and a big announcement I want to make and share with you first on this program about Karen Bass, the mayor-elect of this city, when we come forward after news, traffic, and sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
I'm Ray Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Trump's Twitter account has been reinstated. New Twitter CEO Elon Musk made a poll on the site Friday after asking if the former president should be allowed back on Twitter, with 52% of the overall 15 million votes saying he should be. Trump says he doesn't see any reason to rejoin the app, instead preferring to stick to his new platform, Truth Social. Vice President Kamala Harris is in the Philippines. The vice president met with President Marcos in Manila. The talks are aimed at strengthening economic ties. It comes after Harris's visit to Thailand over the weekend, where she attended an event focused on climate change. And that's the latest. I'm Ray Harris, on your source for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
New crash reported in Vasquez Rocks, 14 south at Escondido Canyon Road, middle lane blocked off there, and traffic stops up at Red Rover Mine Road. In South LA, got the Silver 110 northbound, the Martin Luther King off-ramp closed down. That's causing delays on Manchester Avenue. And in Hollywood, you got a police investigation, so the intersection of Vine Street and Fountain Avenue closed down until further notice. Also got metal debris in Torrance. Metal pipes dropped on the 405 northbound at Crenshaw Boulevard. Looks like the 2 right lanes are taken up there. Extra heavy delays from the 110 freeway.
Don't let a traffic accident ruin your day. Call 1-800-INFO-FIX to find the nearest Fix Auto location. Their highly trained and certified technicians will have you back on the road in no time. You have a choice on who fixes your vehicle. Tell your insurance agent you want to go to Fix Auto.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very tough day for both of LA's NFL teams. The Chargers lose by 3 at home to Kansas City. Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce caught 3 touchdown passes. His 17-yard catch and run with 31 seconds left in the game sealed it for the Chiefs. The Rams fell to the bottom of the NFC West after losing in New Orleans. The Lakers won their 3rd straight. Anthony Davis had 30 points and 18 rebounds against San Antonio. USC's football team is in the top 5 of the AP rankings for the first time in 5 years. Deion Sanders has led Jackson State's football team to its first undefeated regular season in school history. The Tigers are 11-0 after beating Alcorn State Saturday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're a slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
Congratulations to this week's KBLA Talk 1580's Office of the Week, Community Legal Aid SoCal. Advocates for justice in Orange and Los Angeles counties. Congratulations, Community Legal Aid SoCal.
Leaving things half done? Not a good option. Like a half-baked peach cobbler.
A gummy crust? I don't think so.
A half-done hairdo.
All done.
Shouldn't the curls be on both sides?
Or a half of a domino.
Bam! Big six!
But where's the other half?
Don't go halfway, especially with your immunity to COVID-19. Keep everyone safer this season by staying up to date with your vaccines and boosters. Visit myturn.ca.gov to find one near you. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
Sanctuary of Hope invites you to come out, support Homeless Youth Awareness Month at a candlelight, interfaith prayer, and youth voice reflections, Tuesday, November 29th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. For more info, visit thesoh.org. Did you know a housing crisis puts young people at huge risk of more violence and trauma? And right now, young people and their children need support more than ever. Prevention services such as financial assistance, education, employment support, and mental health well-being are main drivers of impact. Contact thesoh.org for more information. Did you know an estimated 4.2 million youth and young adults experience homelessness, of which 700,000 are unaccompanied minors? The pathway to functional zero is prevention. More info at thesoh.org. Again, thesoh.org.
Looking for legitimate political discourse without the bear spray? Tune in and speak out. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. She's Dr. Christina Greer. She's a professor at Fordham University, author of the text Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. Before we get back to our conversation about all of these trending political topics we're discussing in this first hour today, an announcement that you'll start hearing pretty much every hour. A little bit later today on KBLA Talk 1580, but I have the honor of being able to share with you first what we're doing around here. As you heard on this program last week, we were honored to have Mayor-elect Karen Bass give us the exclusive, her very first interview after being announced as the winner of this historic election in Los Angeles, making her, of course, the first woman to lead this city, where this radio station is flagshipped in the City of Angels, and only the second African-American. As many of you know, I worked for the first African-American mayor of this city, the late, great Tom Bradley. Karen Bass gave us the exclusive interview last week before even she held her press conference for the city. She came by KBLA Talk 1580, and we thank Mayor-elect Karen Bass for that honor last week. We are pleased to announce today a can't-miss community event. Welcome home, Mayor-elect Karen Bass. Join us for this free public event as we celebrate Mayor-elect Bass's historic victory. There'll be entertainment, food trucks, and a diverse array of vendors, along with attendance and participation from community leaders, elected officials, celebrities, business owners, and other notables. KBLA Talk 1580 will host Mayor-elect Bass on the main stage as we reflect on the importance of this moment and what it means for the black community, for women, and for all Angelenos who believe in the limitless potential of this amazing city. So stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 and all of our social media platforms for all the important details. We look forward to celebrating with Mayor-elect Karen Bass and you in the coming days. So stay tuned to this station for all the details. Free event. You'll want to be there to see Karen Bass as we welcome her back to L.A. from Washington, where she's been serving in Congress, to be the next chief executive officer of this city. We are excited about the opportunity to be the station that is hosting this huge and stellar and amazing grand celebration of Karen Bass as the new mayor of this city. So stay tuned to this station. You'll start hearing those promos pretty much every hour for the next couple of weeks. But just make sure you lock the date in on your calendar when we announce the location and the actual date and time. But you'll be hearing that in the days to come. And once again, we thank Karen Bass for giving us the exclusive conversation last week. That said, back to our conversation now with Dr. Christina Greer, again, Fordham University, author of the book Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. Because you teed it up, Professor Greer, I followed you in your commentary about this race in Georgia. We all know there's a runoff between Herschel Walker and Reverend Raphael Warnock, Senator Raphael Warnock, on December the 6th. President Obama has announced he'll be in Georgia on December 1st to campaign with and for Raphael Warnock, trying to get him across the finish line here. We know that the Senate, either way, will be controlled by Democrats. It'd be nice to have that extra vote But at the very least, we know Kamala Harris will remain in a position to cast the tie-breaking vote for anything that might come up. So we'll see what happens in the state of Georgia. But the question I pose, and I want to get your take on, Professor Greer, is how you read the fact that these evangelicals in the South, these evangelicals in Georgia, would rather support a guy with the track record of Herschel Walker rather than a moderate preacher, one of them who pastors the church once pastored by Dr. King, but that's still not enough to get evangelicals to vote for a Baptist preacher on the ballot in their state. How do you read that?
Oh, goodness, Tavis. I mean, as my grandmother said, it's a sin and a shame, right? My colleague, Anthea Butler, who's a professor at University of Pennsylvania, who's written about this extensively. I mean, she's the foremost expert on sort of the behavior of these types of white evangelicals. I mean, and we know that, a large part of it is just pure racism. A part of it is how white people see black people. Herschel Walker is the type of black person that they are comfortable with, that makes them feel good. For the more strategic white evangelicals, they know that he's the type of legislator who will go to the Senate and essentially say yes to anything that they want or need without reading it, without asking any questions. There will be no pushback. He's made it very clear that he struggles with all types of issues, but I think cognitively it's apparent that intellectually he's not suited for the job, and that's just the type of legislator they want, someone who will not question any part of their agenda and just has no internal policy or moral compass when it comes to their issues. And so the fact that they can look at someone like a moderate, even someone like Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock, who thinks through these difficult issues, who's willing to actually sit down at the table and go through some of these issues with all Georgians, the fact that they have chosen to cast their lot with the Herschel Walkers of the world instead of the Raphael Warnocks, I think says a lot more about them than it does say about Herschel Walker. Yeah.
How do you process, and I want to be careful in how I frame this because I'm not trying to do any sort of pop psychology on Donald Trump or Herschel Walker, but I had a professor, former professor at Yale, who the country knows, on this program just a week ago. As one of the persons, we were reflecting on the fact that she was one of the persons who early on told us that Donald Trump had some sort of mental issues, some narcissistic tendencies. And for that, she was roundly criticized by many, ended up losing her position at Yale University, she believes in part because of some things that she tweeted about Donald Trump. And she's in a fight with Yale now to get her position back. The point I'm driving toward is that there have been any number of people, and I'm talking about specialists, persons who do, in fact, treat patients every day, who have looked cognitively at Donald Trump. They have looked behaviorally at Donald Trump. Say nothing of the fact he'd never run for office before, but there are so many reasons that one could point to for why he was not suited to become the president of these United States, and that was on the front side. On the back side, we know he had no business being there. But here we are again with an opportunity to look at Herschel Walker, to your point, cognitively. And I'm not trying to demonize him. We all saw Dave Chappelle's comments last week on Saturday Night Live. But to your point about his cognitive condition, his behavioral condition, say nothing of his track record, etc., it's so abundantly clear, again, having never run for office for anything, he is not qualified to sit in the U.S. Senate, and yet none of that matters, again, to these voters in Georgia. You've already sort of commented on the way you see this, but I want to put a finer point on how we, in fact, go to polls, go into the ballot boxes, the booths, to vote for people who we know cognitively don't have the wherewithal to serve in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah. I mean, Tavis, when you look at Herschel Walker trying to give these speeches, it goes beyond jokes and it goes beyond, me trying to do some armchair psychology. This is a man who needs a system. Mm-hmm. This is a man who clearly, has put his body on the line for a sport that he was very good at. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not trying to take away from his gains on the football field and his accomplishments as an athlete. But that does not mean that you could or should be a U.S. senator, one of the most prestigious positions to legislate. I mean, I don't know if people really understand the role of the senator, why the framers actually make it such that, every state only gets 2, and it's only 100 senators, 435 members of the House, lots of those folks. But this is the prestigious, in many ways, the launch pad to the presidency. We've seen so many senators go from Senate to the presidency. But when you look at someone like Herschel Walker, who literally can't string together 2 cognitive thoughts, you have to ask yourself, does his party care about him?
Mm-hmm.
To have him out here, not just making fun of, embarrassing himself and his family, but also it's like, this is a man who does need assistance. So the level of frustration I think, because you have someone who's so overqualified, like Senator Warnock, and we know that as African Americans, oftentimes we're sitting in spaces looking at people next to us like, well, wow, how many times have you been on a panel, Tavis, and your decades-long credentials lined up next to someone, and you're like, funny how we're supposed to be equal, and that is absolutely not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is, it just goes back to, it always reminds me of when Barack Obama was running for Senate in Illinois. And you remember he was running against Jack Ryan, and Jack Ryan had to acquiesce due to some personal issues. And the Republicans were scrambling to put up someone against him. And who did they put up? Alan Keyes.
Mm-hmm.
Just, hey, the Democrats have a black guy. We'll get a black guy. Doesn't matter that he doesn't have
And moved him,
strong policy.
and let's be clear, moved him to Illinois to do it. He wasn't living in Illinois yet.
The same way they did with Herschel Walker.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a qualified black man who's running, and so for the Democrats, so hey, we'll get a black man too. And then it becomes a race, which is really, it's insulting. It's insulting to the American people, but it's definitely insulting to Reverend Senator Warnock, who's actually, thought really deeply about a lot of the issues facing Georgians, not just economic, but I mean, obviously he's dealing with everything from climate change to a woman's right to choose to, really trying to get job creation and get COVID under control. I mean, he's trying to do a holistic conversation with the residents of Georgia.
Yep, there's our soundtrack again. We love it. On that note, let me tell you that when we come forward, I want to come back to this point just briefly because it occurred to me. I was thinking about this last night, early this morning, in fact. And again, I want to be very gentle in how I approach this, but it's pretty well known at this point that Dianne Feinstein, the senior senator from the state of California, is suffering with some mental issues. She is advanced in age, and she's made a number of comments, including one that was widely reported again just last week. It's clear that she is not as sharp as she once was. And clear to many of us that Dianne Feinstein probably should not have run the last time around, but certainly at this point is not as, again, sharp as she once was. Want to be kind about this and gentle about this. And yet there's all this conversation about Dianne Feinstein no longer really being qualified to serve in the Senate given her mental condition. And there's all kind of commentary about that. And yet we can see a guy like Herschel Walker, who clearly, as Professor Greer said, has issues streaming and stringing thoughts together on his way potentially to the U.S. Senate. One gets poo-pooed, one gets dismissed, and the other gets a serious conversation about whether or not that senator, Dianne Feinstein, in this instance, needs to step aside. I'll let you figure out why one gets attention and the other doesn't. I digress for the moment. More with Professor Christina Greer when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where truth prevails. The tricky station is down the dial.
East West Players brings you the stage play Brothers Paranormal by Prince Gomovilas, directed by Jeff Liu, November 17th through December 11th. After a nationwide increase in sightings of Asian-looking ghosts, two Thai brothers, one from Thailand and one from the American Midwest, struggle to launch a ghost hunting business and are called to the home of an African-American couple displaced from Hurricane Katrina. This suspenseful, humorous, compassionate exploration of the trauma of leaving home, whether crossing the country, the globe, or the other side, is a play for everyone. Get tickets now through December 11th at eastwestplayers.org. eastwestplayers.org.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Bob Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talent, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
So, Dr. Greer, I hope you're sitting down. Some breaking news here. We were talking about Herschel Walker not being qualified to serve in the U.S. Senate, given his cognitive condition from playing football all those years, I suspect. We were talking about Donald Trump years ago not being qualified to run for president and all the issues that he had, which we saw play out over 4 years. And certainly during the January 6th Select Committee hearings, we heard stories of him running outside and jumping in the Beast, the presidential motorcade, and grabbing the steering wheel and insisting that they take him to the Capitol. All kinds of things we've heard and learned about the behavior or misbehavior, as it were, of Donald Trump in the White House, which makes it clear he had no business being there in the first place. We talked about Herschel Walker. We talked about Donald Trump and their cognitive issues. And now Kanye West. Kanye West has announced he will run for president once again. Shortly after returning to Twitter, he is back on Twitter as well. As I mentioned earlier in this conversation, Elon Musk has welcomed Donald Trump back to Twitter. We will see what Donald Trump does with that. But Donald Trump had been kicked off of Twitter. Kanye West had been kicked off of Twitter. Kanye now is back on Twitter, and in Kanye fashion has announced, making news, that he is going to run for president again in 2024. You recall he ran in 2020, got like 60,000 votes, but he's running again in 2024. So I'm not sure this is a story that you're going to hear me talk about every day on this program, but it clearly, the point I'm drawing here is people who are not mentally stable enough to be president, much less a U.S. senator, but it also connects to what happens when you allow people like Donald Trump, Kanye, and others back onto Twitter. Enough said from my perspective. Dr. Greer, how do you read that?
Well, I'll say this. I think it's really sad that Kanye West doesn't have enough people close by him to tell him that this is a terrible idea, and to help him get the help that he really needs. But I'll close with this because I'm tired. I don't like talking about this man, because then I do turn into an armchair psychologist for a host of reasons. Yeah. But I'll say this. If you remember at the beginning of lockdown, when we were all watching Tiger King and, everyone's baking banana bread and, we're doing all the things when we first started lockdown in 2020. And then we saw that the Tiger King is now serving a 22-year sentence in prison. And I just want to remind your listeners, he's not serving that sentence for abusing tigers for several years. He's serving that sentence because he ran for public office and didn't have people around him who understood campaign finance. And he signed some paperwork that said one thing and he did the other. And so I would caution anyone who wants to run for office, if you don't have a good team around you who understands the law, the economics of running for office, and all the different provisions that you must obey if you are running for any office, whether it's dog catcher and school board superintendent, city council member, or the president of the United States, you will find yourself in a federal prison. And so it saddens me to think that Kanye West is not mentally stable right now and that people are letting him embark on this endeavor. But when we start talking about the finances of running for office, that is where a lot of people end up in prison. And sadly, this train is on a rough road to nowhere in a lot of ways.
Yeah. The minute you said that, my mind went to Al Capone, and you know why? Because they didn't get Al Capone for killing people. They got Al Capone for tax evasion. So the money is always what trips people up.
It's always the money.
It's always the money. Follow the money.
I tell my students at the first day of school, if you get stuck on an exam, just know it's the money. Yep. The answer is the money. It's always the money.
There you go. Our remaining moments with Dr. Christina Greer when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Institute for Diversity Certification is all about the 3Ds: dedication, determination, and discipline. Learn more about our globally recognized diversity certification program today by calling 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192, or visit diversitycertification.org. As the #1 organization for certified diversity professionals and also certified diversity executive credentials, diversitycertification.org will provide an opportunity for you to demonstrate dedication to the field, determination to make progress, and more discipline to your process. Go today and learn more about the diversity certification system. Call 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192. Or go to diversitycertification.org. That's diversitycertification.org. The standard of excellence, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for human rights. The Los Angeles Civil, Human Rights and Equity Department, or LA Civil Rights for short, is focused on reducing bias and injustices while leveling the playing field. LA Civil Rights does this through equity and empowerment, the Office of Racial Equity, hate prevention, upward mobility programming, and youth programming. They convene commissions and advisory councils. The Civil, Human Rights and Equity Department of the City of Los Angeles is led by founding executive director Capri Maddox and is breaking new ground for municipal governance. LA Civil Rights oversees citywide initiatives, including the Renew program, LA Repair program, and the LA for All campaign. The LA Civil Rights Department believes that the goals of equity and inclusion for all people can be achieved through hard work and collective action. To get involved and be part of the solution, report a civil rights violation, or get more information, visit civilandhumanrights.lacity.org. That's civilandhumanrights.lacity.org, or call 213-978-1845. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Is your job recession-proof? Now might be the perfect time to switch careers and become an IT professional with My Computer Career. IT is listed as one of the top recession-proof professions. You could have your dream job in just months, not years. No experience needed. Take classes online or on campus, and financial aid is available to those who qualify, including the GI Bill. Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. It's not rocket science. It's mycomputercareer.edu.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
I got about 3 minutes left here with Dr. Christina Greer, and I want to just ask her a quick question for those who are interested in reading her text, and you should. It's called Black Ethnics, easy for me to say, right? Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. In the text, she really investigates the increasingly ethnically diverse black populations in this country from Africa and the Caribbean and beyond. And I raise that, Dr. Greer, because I'm curious as to how you read that increasingly ethnically diverse population of black folk in this country, given that we're moving toward the day in the not-too-distant future where America will be a minority nation. How do you read those two things?
Well, first, Tavis, I refuse to say majority minority because we are, as people of color and as a woman, I'm a global majority.
Okay.
So there are more people of color and there are more women in this world. And, you know, this idea, so it's all about framing, right? It's like how we can't be minorities if we are the majority. So it's going to be a majority people of color country.
Okay.
But we're no longer in minority. And we know that Latinos are the second largest group behind whites, and blacks are now the third largest group, and Asians are quickly gaining as the fourth and soon to be possibly third largest group. But I really wanted to have this conversation because depending on where you live, you know, in LA, we've seen obviously a growing Caribbean and African population on the West Coast, but obviously in cities like New York and DC and Philadelphia and even Boston and Atlanta, we've seen really diverse black populations, obviously black electeds who are African and Caribbean as well,
Mhm.
which creates some really, sometimes it's some tension, but obviously there's some really great opportunities for substantive coalition building around some policies that all of us can get behind so we can actually get more as a larger group. And so that's what I was interested in really sussing out in this academic work.
Mhm. I take your point about majority minority. That's why I do this program every day. You always get exposed to different ways of seeing things. I say all the time that at our best, this program and my work at its best is about challenging people to re-examine the assumptions they hold and helping them to expand their inventory of ideas. And that's not just true for the audience, it's true for me as well. So I take your point about the phrase majority minority, and I will govern myself accordingly in the days, weeks, and months ahead when I address this particular issue. But for now, I'm grateful to have had you on the program. We'll have you back. I know you're working on your next text, and we'll have you back to perhaps tee that up if you're going to do with Richard Rothstein in our next hour. He's teeing up his next book, and so we'll have you back to do the same thing. And particularly as we move through this political season, I would love to have you come back and download our audience again on the world as you see it. Dr. Christina Greer, Associate Professor of Political Science and American Studies at Fordham University and author of the book Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. Dr. Greer, thank you for coming on. Have a great rest of the day there in New York City with your sirens and all the like.
My absolute pleasure, Tavis. Have a great holiday season.
Same to you. Thank you for coming on. That's our first hour. 2 hours to go. 2 great hours to go. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are as well. You are listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Ree Harris, and here